What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kilo Loco, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So, I wanted to talk about a feature that I saw while I was scrolling through Twitter. So, let's go ahead and take a look at that. So, as you can see, I was scrolling through Twitter today, right? And I saw that somebody had retweeted this post or commented on this post. It was actually Adrian right here. Check Adrian out. He's awesome. Anyways, I was scrolling through. I saw that there was this post and I see that there's this GitHub widget, right? And I have the GitHub app on my phone. So I'm like, oh yeah, I want to get that on there. So then I try to add it to my phone and I can't figure it out. So then I'm scrolling through the comments and I'm like, how come I can't do that? And somebody asked, what app? I like it, and he says the GitHub official app. So then somebody's like, well, why am I not getting it? And he says, well, it's only for beta. So I was like, really? Like, it's only available for the cool kids. Only the cool kids get this feature. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to wait. Anybody that knows me, whenever I want something, I go out there and get it. So what I ended up doing was I was looking at the GitHub Rest API. I was trying to figure out, can I do it with the Rest API? Nope. I started looking at the GraphQL API and I was looking at it. Kind of did look promising. I was looking through like the references, I was looking through the queries and on the user object and all that stuff. It turned out that you can only show like the issues and like maybe the pull request, but you couldn't get the actual commits, which is a problem, right? So you can't actually build this from real data. So then I was like, damn, how do I make this damn chart? So then the next thing that I thought of, I was like, okay, well, let's inspect this element. And sure enough, if you take a look at this, at the actual HTML of the file. All right, let's put it down here so that you can see it. So if you actually take a look at the HTML of the file, you'll actually see that each of these objects is represented by this class called day, and we can get the information out of there. So data count is going to be essentially how many, commits or however many data things that you did for that day to represent the color. And then you have the date of that day, right? So I was like, well, I've done something like this before. I've scraped websites before, so let's try out some SwiftSoup. So sure enough, we're going to be using SwiftSoup in order to scrape our GitHub profile and get our very own contribution graph, show that, and make a widget out of it. So all that said, let's go ahead and jump right on in. Now, the very first thing that we need to do is we need to get the URL for SwiftSoup. And I'm going to head back over here to our app and we're going to add it in as a Swift package. Paste it in there. There it is. We're going to hit next. All right, looks good. And now we have SwiftSoup into our project. Awesome. Next, what we actually need to do is we need to create a struct that's going to represent the data. So let's go ahead and create a new file. All right, so as you can see, we're going to call it development day. Call it whatever you want. I don't really care. Anyways, go back over here. You're going to see that we're going to need two different pieces of information, right? We're going to need the date and we're going to need the data count. So let's go ahead and add those two properties in there. All right, so the development day is all set. Next, what we need to do is we actually need to create a view that's going to represent the graph. So let's start building out that UI. All right, so we have our contributions graph view. Let's think about what we need to do with this. So we're essentially just gonna have a single view where we're gonna pass in the different development days into this view, and it's gonna populate with all the different, boxes. So let's go ahead and set up the initializer. All right, and let's also add in a callback to pass back the development day that was selected, just so that we could get a little bit more information and check to make sure that everything is displaying correctly. All right, perfect. So then what I want to do is I want to create a lazy H grid, right? And the reason why we're going to be using an H grid is because we actually want the data to go from left to right, and we want the each day to go from top to bottom and then back to the top again. So let's go ahead and create a couple of rows. All right, so as you can see, we have rows, which is essentially just an array of grid items. Now we need 7 of these grid items, and I have these static constants right here, which are going to represent the box size. So each box is going to be essentially 15 by 15, and the spacing. So there's going to be 4 pixels in between each of the boxes. So we're passing in the box size for this fixed grid item, and then also passing in the spacing. And then, like I said, there's 7 days in a week, so we have 7 rows. So now we're all set up and we can actually create our lazy H grid. All right, so we have our lazy H grid, which is composed of our rows and has the same spacing. Then we're going to iterate through each of our days, and we're going to pass that day in. Now what we need to do is we need to create a color. So in order to go through the different colors, we have to like essentially change the amount of green that we're showing based off of however many commits that each of these days has. So if we take a look back at our development day for the data count, what we want to do is the higher the number, the brighter the green. So let's go ahead and create a function. I'm just going to go ahead and copy it from earlier and paste it in. All right, and there you go. So we have this GitHub color function, which takes in a count, right? And then all we're going to do is just check the count. We're going to do a bunch of if statements, and then we're going to, I did the whole entire color selection so that we can have as close to the greens as possible, and essentially return the right color. So with that said, let's go ahead and return a GitHub color for each day that's passed in. All right, there we go. So we have our GitHub color being created with a count, our data count. Then we're gonna make sure that we're creating a square, obviously. And then corner radius, we've got to make it nice and rounded. And then whenever we tap one of these different days, we would just wanna pass back that selected day. Now let's go over to our actual content view so that we can start displaying this thing. All right, so we're gonna pass in a contributions graph view, but in order to actually populate this with something, we're gonna need to fetch the website and parse that data. So let's go ahead and create a view model so that we can do all that logic. All right, so there we go. We have our days and we have our selected day in our view model. We have an instance of our view model. It's a state object. And then now we can just simply pass in the view model dot days, and then we can pass in a closure that will update our selected day. So we can just do view model dot selected day is equal to the first argument, which there's only one. All right, and a little bit of spacing just to make it look better. So now we have our contribution graph. We should be able to resume that. We won't be getting anything back. It's just going to be an empty view because we're not just populating with random boxes anyways, but at least we got it going. I also want to make sure that we're able to display some of the information whenever we do select a day so that we're not just selecting a day and not doing anything with it. So let's go ahead and add that in our VStack. All right, there we go. So we have this if statement that's going to unwrap the selected day. And then if we do have it, then we're going to just simply show some information. Now, one thing I want to point out here is that we are currently going to show like the iOS version of a date, which is not going to be really human readable. And we're also going to need to be working with a date formatter in order to do some of these things, like turn the actual date that we're getting back from the HTML into an actual Swift date. So let's go ahead and create a date service. All right, so as you can see, we have this date service, which is simply going to be a singleton because we just want to make sure that we have a date formatter object stored into memory because it is kind of expensive to keep recreating. And we want to make sure that we're going to be able to turn a date into, or turn a string into a date. Now we need to go back and look at how they're formatting the date. And as you can see, it's going to be year, month, and then day. So let's go ahead and update our formatter with that date format. All right, so we have the same format that we're expecting back. And now what we can do is over in our content view, we can display the date the same way that we're kind of receiving it. So whether you want to update that or not, that's up to you. All right, so as you can see, we're just simply going to format the date using our newly created date formatter service, and we're going to just pass that date formatter into the string from method. So that's looking good. Next, what we need to do is we actually need to have a service that's going to download the HTML and parse it. So let's create a new service for that. All right, so we have this get development days function inside of our newly created GitHub Parser, and we're going to be taking in a username. So this is just so that you can, download this code or follow along and then pass in your own name, and then it's a little bit easier, but whatever. Anyways, and we have a completion coming because even though that this is technically shown as synchronous code, we're not going to actually be going to the background thread. I still want to return it on, a completion handler just because it just feels right. All right, so let's go ahead and start parsing this stuff out. All right, so I wanted to stop right here just so that we can double check and make sure that everything's going to continue to work as expected. So, we imported SwiftSoup, and then we're going to pass in the URL. This is just going to be github.com/whatever your username is. Then we can actually download that data by using string and the contents of Initializer. So that's going to get us our HTML. We can create a document out of the SwiftSoup.parse the HTML, and then we're going to get the elements that we want. So we're going to get them by, remember that class was day. So we can parse it, we get those elements, and then I just want to simply print out each of those elements. And back over here in our content view, let's go ahead and create a function that we can call that's going to be get development days, and that will trigger our parsing to actually start. All right, so as you can see, we have this get development days function that's going to be called from our view models initializer, and then we have GitHub Parser .get development days, and then we're just going to pass in whatever your username is on GitHub, and that is going to have the completion handler of passing in days, and then we're just going to simply update, this days right here. Now, obviously, we haven't gotten that far, but it should work. Now, there apparently is a problem. I think that I forgot to actually make this return an array. Yep, it was supposed to be an array. So we just want to make sure that's an array, and then we can update the days like so right there. Looking good. So let's go ahead and run this, and let's see what we get in our logs. All right, and it's done. And as we can see, we get all of our data. So we have the class, which is a day, and then the two different attributes that we want to get are, once again, it's going to be the data count and the data date. So now it's time to parse those out and create a development day out of that data. So back over here in our GitHub parser, let's finish our work and let's continue parsing this all out. All right, so we're just going to do a compact map. We need to make sure that we're able to get back all this data, or else we're just going to return nil for whatever object is coming back. So as you can see, we're going to unwrap the data date into a date string, convert that into a date, and then we're going to do the same thing with the data count. But remember, we're getting back a string and we expect an integer, so we're going to convert it to an integer, and then we're going to return our development day. That's going to return an array from our compact map, and then we're going to pass that through to the completion handler. So with all that done, I think that we are actually finished. Let's go ahead and run it, and let's see if we can get our contribution graph to show. And bam, there it is. I love it. I love it. Now, there is a problem. We aren't supposed to be showing all of them. We're only supposed to be showing like the last 17 weeks. At least that's how many GitHub is showing. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue down here, and we're going to make sure that we're able to get the last 17 weeks from this coming Saturday, and then that's what we're actually going to do. So we're going to actually filter this down into the last 17 weeks of contributions. All right, so as you can see, I need to get this Saturday, right? We need to get the coming Saturday because that's the way that kind of GitHub sets up their chart or whatever. And then we need to do 17 weeks ago from this coming Saturday. So 17 weeks ago from this coming Saturday. And then what we're going to do is, as long as the date is greater than the 17 weeks ago from this Saturday, then we're going to include it into this new array of the last 17 weeks, and then we'll return that as our development days. So let's go ahead and run that, and let's take a look at what it looks like. And as you can see, it gives you that exact behavior that GitHub kind of gives you. So it gives you like up until X date, and then it stops. It doesn't even show boxes anymore for any future dates. So if I were to click on this, we can see that I made one contribution on the 24th, and then we take a look at this one, and 12 contributions on the 14th of October. So we're looking pretty good. We're pretty much done with the UI. We're all set up. Now we actually need to start making the widget. So let's go ahead and create a new target. So file, new target. We're gonna go ahead and search for widget because we ain't got that time to scroll. And let's go ahead and call it not GitHub widget. All right, so let's go ahead and finish this and activate. So now we can go over to our widget target, and as you can see, it's going to give us all kinds of stuff. So I don't really know how to start from with all this garbage boilerplate. So let's go ahead and start from the top. First thing that we need to do is create an entry type. So that's going to be our contribution graphs entry. Okay, so we need development day. So there's a couple of things that we're going to need in here, which we're not currently able to access because we haven't set up the target. So first thing that we're going to need is the GitHub Parser. Let's go ahead and open up our side menu and start enabling some of these things. So we have the GitHub Parser. I think we're going to need the date service. Development day, we'll definitely need that. Contribution graph view. Yep, we're going to need that. And I think that's pretty much it. So now let's go back over to our widget, and we should have access to the development day, and we do. Now let's go ahead and make our timeline provider. All right, so now that we have our provider kind of all stubbed out, for the placeholder and for the snapshot, I'm just going to show the same thing. It's just going to be a dummy graph. So we're just going to create like a date and then like an array of the days for the past 119 days, the past 17 weeks. And let's just go ahead and create, that dummy entry. All right, awesome. So now we're just gonna, create, a graph by going over essentially 17 weeks worth of days and creating a development day, an empty development day for that day. And then we're going to return our contributions entry right here. So that means that we're able to just simply return the dummy entry right here and then also pass it as the completion right here. Perfect. So now we need to focus on our get timeline. Now this is the part where we're essentially just going to be doing the same thing as we did before in order to show the data on our graph. So we're going to be using our GitHub Parser in order to do that. All right, so now we have our entry right here, and then we have our timeline. So we're just going to pass in the entry, and then we're only going to be updating our widget every day, I guess, only once a day. So now we're done with our provider. Let's go ahead and create our widget entry view. All right, as simple as that. So we have our widget entry view, passing in our entry, and then we're able to create our contribution graph view by passing in the entry days. Last thing to do is to simply create the widget itself. All right, so we now have our actual widget object. We have our kind, making sure that this matches this over here. And then we're just going to use that static configuration, create it with the provider and the kind, and then make sure that our view is going to be the widget entry. Now, keep in mind that we only set this up to be, you know, the size of the screen essentially. So we want to make sure that we update the supported families to only be the system medium. So all of that is done. If we did it right, then we should be able to see our widgets. Now it looks like I do have an error. Let's go ahead and find out where that's at. All right, looks like we are not linking SwiftSoup to our library or to our widget. So let's go over here and we need to make sure that we include SwiftSoup right here. So now that it's all connected, we can do Command Shift K to clean that up. Let's run it again, and I think it's gonna work. Oh, I know it's gonna work. All right, so, and as you can see, bam, look at that. Oh, we don't need no GitHub. We don't need no GitHub. We don't need no, yeah, see, look at that. Look at that. We did that. Don't need to wait for no stinking beta. Bam, look at that. And then you just go ahead and pass in your name for all the relevant areas, and you can make it as fancy as you want, but look at that. Isn't that so cool? And then you open it up, and then you can like select the day. We're awesome. All right, so that's going to be it for today. I was really bothered by the fact that I couldn't have this, and now I can have it, and I don't need to wait for GitHub to have it. So I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you went through this and, you know, learned something new. And if you have any other video ideas that you want me to cover, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Would really appreciate that. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe. And with all that said, let's make sure that you go out there and you keep coding passionately.